Hello, welcome to another scary story that you can fall asleep to. The gravel crunched under the tires as the van rolled to a stop in front of the manor. The house was huge, 3 stories tall, its windows shuttered, and its roof, half, collapsed in places. Yet despite its age, a faint glow pulsed from within, as though the walls themselves were breathing. Creepy as hell, said Marissa, pulling her coat tighter. Darren laughed, hopping out. That's the point. It's a haunted house rental, not an Airbnb. They were 4, Darren, Marissa, Chris, and Elena. Friends since high school, they had grown distant, only recently reconnecting through Darren. Suggestion of a weekend escape. But as they stood before the lantern house, all 4 felt something they did say aloud, like the place was already waiting for them. Inside, dust and shadows filled the air. The house smelled of mold and old wood. They explored the rooms, peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, cold fireplaces. Nothing unusual for a place this old. But in the hallway, Elena froze. Guys, was that there before? On a small table sat a lantern, glowing faintly. It wasn't tea lit by fire. Its light shimmered unnaturally, green and gold, casting long shadows that didn't move quite right. None of them had brought it. Atmosphere prop, Chris suggested weakly, but Darren shook his head. It wasn't tea here when we walked in. The lantern flickered once, as if acknowledging them. That night, as they tried to sleep in the upstairs rooms, the lantern's glow seeped under the door. Elena tossed and turned, finally opening her eyes, and gasped. The lantern was inside her room now, sitting on the dresser. The shadows it cast stretched unnaturally long across the floor, reaching toward her bed. Then came the whispers, a voice she almost recognized, speaking her name. Elena, you've been here before. Her scream brought the others running, but when they entered, the lantern was gone. No sign it had ever been there, and yet the whispers lingered in the air like smoke. The next morning, Darren tried to laugh off the lantern. Old houses do weird things. Drafts, shadows, tricks of the mind. But Chris wasn't buying it. He had found something in the hallway, a door at the very end, one that looked older than the rest of the house. Its wood was blackened, its handle rusted. Locked, Chris muttered, tugging at it. No way this thing's been opened in years. Yet, as they stood there, they swore they heard movement on the other side. A slow shuffle, a faint cough. Someone's in there, Elena whispered. When Darren pressed his ear to the door, the sound stopped, and then 3 sharp knocks from the other side. That night, another lantern appeared, this time in Marissa's room. She tried to ignore it, rolling over to sleep, but the glow pressed against her closed eyes until she finally turned. It sat on her nightstand, humming faintly. When she leaned closer, she saw something inside the lantern. Glass. Not a flame, but a figure, a person, face pale, mouth open, in a silent scream. Marissa stumbled back, nearly tripping over her suitcase. But when she looked again, the lantern was empty. The hum grew louder. She swore it whispered her name. Chris discovered a painting in the dining room the next morning. It was dusty and half torn, but clear enough. A family of 4 standing in front of the lantern house, lanterns in their hands. They look familiar, Chris said. The father, stern face. The mother, says vacant stare. 2 children, shadows falling across their faces. Darren brushed dust away and froze. Holy shit, that looks like you, Elena. She shoved him, annoyed. But when she looked at the painting herself, her heart skipped. The girl in the portrait did look like her. Same hair, same eyes. But the painting was dated 1894. Elena woke to scratching noises in her room. At first she thought it was rats, but when she sat up, she saw lines carving themselves into the plaster. Her breath caught as the scratches formed letters. "Get out." She backed against the wall, heart pounding. But then the letters shifted, lines rearranging until they spelled. "Stay." The scratching stopped, but the marks remained, burned deep into the wall. When she showed the others, they swore it hadn't been there before. But her fingernails were lined with dust, as though she'd been the one carving. Exploring the upper floor, Darren found a small locked room. When he forced the door, the smell of mildew and rot rolled out. Inside were two small beds, neatly made, with toys scattered on the floor. But the toys weren't ordinary. They were carved wooden figures, each one with grotesque faces, mouths stretched too wide, eyes gouged out. On the nightstand sat another lantern, unlit. As Darren reached for it, both beds creaked as if something invisible had just sat down. He slammed the door shut, his hands trembling. Marissa uncovered a diary in the library, its leather cover nearly falling apart. Most of the entries were mundane: farm chores, weather, family notes. But near the end, the handwriting changed, frantic and jagged. "The lanterns are back. They say they'll guide us, but the light burns. The children won. T stopped screaming. My husband. He's not my husband anymore. His eyes are lantern glass." The final page was nothing but a scrawl of words repeated over and over. "Dawn. T looked at the light." That night, all four were awakened by the same thing. The sound of footsteps in the hallway. They gathered outside their rooms, hearts racing. At the far end of the hall, a lantern glowed. It floated in the air, drifting slowly toward them, shadows stretching across the walls like reaching arms. No one moved. No one breathed. The lantern stopped in front of the locked door at the end of the hall. And then it knocked. 3 sharp knocks, just like before. The door creaked open. When the locked door creaked open, a gust of cold air rushed out, colder than anything else in the house. Inside was darkness so thick their phone flashlights barely cut through. The room was empty. No furniture, no windows. Just stone walls slick with moisture. In the center sat a lantern, brighter than the others, its glow steady and cruel. The second Darren stepped closer, the door slammed shut behind them. The lantern flared, and in its glow, they saw dozens of faces pressed into the stone walls, mouths moving silently. When the group stumbled back out of the room, gasping, their watches and phones were all wrong. They had entered the room at midnight. Now, it was dawn. But none of them remembered the hours in between. Marissa checked the diary again. A faint scrawl had appeared across the blank last page. The house eats time. That morning, Elena noticed a tall mirror in the upstairs hall. She could have sworn it hadn't been there before. When she looked into it, she didn't see her reflection. Instead, she saw the family from the painting, standing behind her. The father's lantern glowed, its light spreading across the mirror surface. She screamed, but when the others ran to her, the mirror showed only her pale reflection. Still, her shadow on the floor didn't match her movements. That night, the house groaned louder than usual. The walls themselves seemed to pulse. Then came the screams. Low at first, muffled, like echoes behind the wallpaper. But soon they grew louder, sharper, until it felt like the walls themselves were alive with wailing voices. Chris tore at the plaster in panic, ripping chunks away. Behind the wall wasn't tea wood or brick. It was rows of lanterns, dozens of them, flickering in unison. Each flame held a face. Darren discovered a door in the kitchen floor, half hidden beneath a warped rug. Basement steps led down into darkness. The others argued against going, but Darren insisted. He needed answers. Each step echoed too loud, as though the basement was swallowing the sound. At the bottom, the smell of rot made his stomach twist, and in the shadows, rows of lanterns lined the walls, their glow faint, pulsing like a heartbeat. As Darren stepped closer, one of the lanterns flickered violently, then shattered. From the broken glass crawled something pale and boneless, dragging itself across the dirt floor. Its face was blank, but it whispered in Darren's voice. He bolted up the stairs, slamming the hatch shut behind him. But as the others rushed to meet him, a faint glow seeped through the cracks in the wood, as though the basement itself was alive. That night, instead of the usual green, gold glow, a black lantern appeared in the hallway. Its light was wrong. It swallowed shadows instead of casting them. Elena, drawn by something she could to explain, reached for it. The instant her fingers touched the glass, the light surged and she screamed. Her eyes rolled back, and her shadow stretched across the entire hallway, writhing like it was alive. When the light faded, she collapsed, but her shadow didn't return to normal. It kept moving even while she slept. Chris spotted someone outside in the overgrown garden the next morning, a man, tall and thin, carrying a lantern. "Hey," Chris shouted, but the figure didn't respond. When the others joined him, the man was gone, but the grass where he stood was scorched into a perfect circle. Marissa found another note in the diary later that day. The ink was fresh. "The keeper walks the grounds. Do not follow his light." That night they tried barricading the hallway, hoping to stop the lanterns from moving through. But when they gathered in the living room, they froze. A lantern was glowing in the upstairs window, visible from outside. The light moved slowly, as though carried by an unseen hand. Then another lantern appeared in the next window, and another. Soon, every window of the lantern house glowed, surrounding them in an impossible cage of light. Desperate, Marissa tried to smash one of the lanterns with a chair. The glass shattered easily, but instead of extinguishing, the flame burst outward, spilling across the floor. It wasn't tea fire, it was ash, black, swirling, choking them as it filled the air. In the ash, faces formed, mouthing words none of them could hear. When it finally settled, the lantern was whole again, and Marissa's skin was covered in fine burns, shaped like hands. The burns on Marissa's arms grew worse overnight. By morning they weren't just burns. They were patterns, circles, lanterns, dozens of them branded into her skin. No matter how she washed or bandaged, the marks remained, faintly glowing in the dark. When she looked into the mirror again, she saw something worse. The marks weren't tea on her reflection. They were on the figure standing behind her. Chris nailed the basement door shut. He hammered boards over it until the wood splintered. But when they returned hours later, the boards were gone, neatly stacked to the side. The door stood wide open. From the basement drifted a faint glow, steady and patient, like the light was waiting for them. That night, Darren heard footsteps outside his door. He cracked it open and froze. The man from the garden stood in the hallway, lantern in hand. The glow cast no shadow, but his voice seeped into Darren's head like oil. "You shouldn't to have come." Then, just as suddenly, The figure vanished, leaving only the lantern floating where he had stood. It fell to the floor with a dull clink. Inside, Darren swore he saw his own eye staring back at him. Elena woke to the sound of dripping. At first, she thought it was rain, but when she sat up, she saw the ceiling above her bed was bleeding. Thick, dark streaks of blood pooled onto the sheets. She screamed for the others. By the time they arrived, the blood had vanished, but her bed frame was still wet, and carved into the wood beneath the sheets were 3 words: "A light knows." The group huddled in the living room, exhausted and terrified. Marissa checked the mirror above the fireplace. Her reflection was gone. Instead, the mirror showed the 4 of them standing in the room exactly as they were, except each of them was holding a lantern. The reflections smiled in unison, and then the glass cracked. For the first time since arriving, the lanterns went out. The entire house plunged into complete darkness. Not a natural darkness. This one pressed against their skin, heavy, suffocating. They fumbled with phones, flashlights. None of them worked. And in that pitch black, they heard dozens of footsteps circling closer, dragging across the floor. The lanterns returned all at once, blazing brighter than ever. In their glow, they saw what had been walking with them. Figures, hundreds of them, faces blank, hands stretched out, all frozen in place as though caught mid-step. The light dimmed slightly, and one of the figures twitched. Chris tore apart the library, desperate for answers. Behind a loose panel, he found a second journal. This one wasn't T the mother. S the handwriting was jagged, cruel. The lanterns are doors. They need vessels to cross. The children burned first. Then my wife. The keeper promises I'll be last, but even he fears the black lantern. It doesn't burn. It devours. The final entry was dated the night the family disappeared. That night, the black lantern appeared again, this time at the center of the living room. Its glow spread like oil, coating the walls, turning the air heavy. The faces inside the glass screamed silently, pressing against the glass. Marissa stepped back too late. The glow spilled across her feet, rooting her to the floor. Her shadow began pulling itself away from her body. Darren grabbed Marissa, yanking her back, but the shadow didn't return. It stood on its own now, writhing, mouthless yet screaming. The lantern flared brighter, and the shadow leapt at the walls, fusing with the others already there. For a heartbeat, the walls pulsed with hundreds of trapped shadows, and then they all turned their heads to look at the group. On the 3rd floor, Elena found a door that hadn't been there before. Its wood was fresh, smooth, untouched by time. When she tried the knob, it didn't budge, but as she pressed her ear to it, she heard laughter, children, giggling, running. Then one voice whispered right into her ear from the other side. "Come play, Elena." Chris stumbled past the cracked mirror in the hallway. This time, it did. Showed them holding lanterns. It showed the keeper. He stood directly behind Chris, lantern raised high. Chris spun, heart pounding, but the hallway was empty. When he looked back into the mirror, the keeper was still there, closer now, his face inches away. That night, the lanterns began humming, low at first, like a vibration in the walls, then louder, filling the house. The pitch shifted into a melody, sad, mournful, almost human. Darren covered his ears, but the sound was inside his head. He saw flashes of the past, the family screaming around a table, lantern light burning their eyes. The song ended abruptly, but the faces in the walls were smiling. Elena woke again to scratching. This time, it wasn't T the wall. It was under her bed. When she bent to look, she saw pale hands clawing upward, gouging letters into the wood frame. They read, "She belongs to us." The hands retreated, but the words burned red, fresh like open wounds. In the parlor, a new lantern appeared, larger than the others, its glass thick, its glow steady. Inside it wasn't Tia face, but an entire scene. They saw the family from the painting, seated around a dinner table, their lanterns burning. Then, slowly, the father looked up from the glass, meeting Darren's eyes, and he smiled. By morning, every window in the house had been sealed by glowing lantern. Light. No sunlight entered. No view of the outside remained. It was as if the house had swallowed the world beyond, leaving only the glow. Marissa pressed her hand to the glass. Her skin blistered instantly, hissing like wax against fire. Darren tried to go downstairs to check the basement, but halfway down, the staircase shifted. The steps stretched downward, lengthening into an impossible spiral. He ran back up, but the top wasn't T where he started. It was another hallway entirely, lined with lanterns. Each lantern showed a reflection of him, but older, broken, and burned. That night, Elena woke to find her window open. The keeper stood in the garden, lantern raised, motionless. His voice seeped through the glass like smoke. "Daughter, come home." Her body moved before her mind did, feet carrying her toward the window. It took all of Marissa's strength to drag her back. In the corner of the living room, something impossible happened. A lantern began growing. Glass bubbled out of thin air, forming around a faint light until it solidified, standing on the floor. Inside its glow, they saw themselves, 4 friends huddled in fear. But in the reflection, one of them was missing. Elena. That night, the house groaned louder than ever. Walls shifted, doors slammed shut, rooms twisted into places they hadn't seen before. By morning, the layout of the lantern house had changed completely. The front door was gone, and in its place, a lantern burned brighter than the sun, its glass cracked, hissing with heat. In the dining room, the family portrait had changed again. Now, the painted faces weren't the old family, S at all. They were theirs. Marissa's painted self looked hollow, her eyes nothing but glowing sockets. Darren's portrait self gripped a lantern with skinless fingers. Chris' jaw was split open, screaming eternally. And Elena, she wasn't painted in. Instead, a glowing outline traced where her body would be, as if waiting for her to step inside. That night, Darren dreamt he was back at the van, parked at the edge of the forest. But when he opened the door, the forest was gone. The van sat in the middle of a lantern, lit void, hundreds of glowing orbs floating silently around him. In their glass, he saw thousands of trapped souls, screaming, pounding, forever imprisoned. When he woke, his fists were bruised and bleeding, as though he been pounding glass all night. Chris finally found the basement door again. It was nailed shut, sealed with rusted chains, but something on the other side was pounding. Each thud shook dust from the ceiling, rattled the frames on the walls. Then, between the bangs, came a voice. "Let me out, please. I can help you." Chris pressed his ear closer. The voice whispered, "But Dawn, bring Elena." Marissa woke to heat. One of the lanterns had ignited on its own, fire bursting inside its glass. The flames didn't consume the lantern, though. Instead, they poured out, creeping across the walls like liquid fire, tracing symbols in ash. The words burned into the wallpaper. She is the light. The fire vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving only charred letters. Elena stopped speaking. For hours, she sat silent, staring into space. When she finally spoke again, it wasn't her voice. It was the keeper's. The lantern's hunger, she said, her small hands trembling. They've chosen her. She will keep them burning. Marissa grabbed her, shaking, but Elena only smiled. It wasn't her smile. They broke into the attic, desperate for escape, desperate for answers. The space was filled with lanterns, hundreds of them, arranged in perfect rows. And at the far end sat a figure. Its body was skeletal, skin stretched thin. In its chest burned a lantern where its heart should be, glowing with violent light. It lifted its head. Welcome home. The figure rose, bones cracking, lantern, heart pulsing. I am the keeper, it said, and she is mine. He pointed at Elena. Darren stepped forward. Take me instead. The keeper tilted his head, amused. One soul for another, perhaps. But the lantern must be fed. Forever. Behind him, the rows of lanterns rattled violently, as if laughing. The house shook violently. Lanterns crashed to the floor, but instead of shattering, they melted into the wood, their light bleeding into the boards. The walls groaned and split, light spilling out like veins of molten gold. The entire house was becoming a lantern, and inside it they were trapped like moths. The keeper reached out, his lantern hand brushing Chris' chest. Chris screamed as his skin blistered, smoke rising. The keeper's touch burned straight into his heart. Chris collapsed, coughing blood, his eyes glowing faintly with inner fire. Feed the light, the keeper said calmly. Chris' body twitched, and then he was gone. Nothing but ashes. A new lantern appeared on the wall. Inside, Chris' face screamed forever. The house twisted again, pulling them downward. A staircase unfurled into darkness, spiraling endlessly. The keeper's voice echoed from below. Come, children, bring her to me. Elena stepped forward willingly, lantern, light reflecting in her wide eyes. Darren and Marissa grabbed her arms, pulling her back. But the stairs kept moving, dragging them toward the abyss. The spiral stairs didn't wait for them. The steps unfurled like a serpent's tongue, pulling their feet downward with every heartbeat. Darren tried to hold Elena back, but her body moved with unnatural strength. She walked like she belonged to the stairs, her eyes glowing faintly, lips whispering, home, 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 home. Marissa clutched the railing. The wood burned her palms, glowing faintly. This wasn't a staircase anymore. It was a throat, swallowing them whole. As they descended, the walls pulsed and split open. Inside the cracks were faces, not painted, not carved. Real faces pressed into the walls, screaming silently, eyes wide, mouths gaping. Their skin stretched across the beams like wallpaper. Some of them looked familiar. Marissa froze. One face was Chris, his fresh eyes still moving, lips still mouthing her name. Darren lost control. He yanked Elena back, shaking her violently. Fight it. You, not theirs, he screamed. But Elena only laughed, a dry, echoing sound, her voice layered with dozens of others. They all said that, she whispered. They all failed. The keeper's voice surged through her throat. She is not yours to save. The stairs ended in a vast chamber. The ceiling vanished into shadow, but the walls were lined with lanterns stacked from floor to sky. thousands of them, each one holding a soul. The light was overwhelming, beating like a heartbeat. Every flicker made their bones vibrate. Every glow pressed on their lungs until they could barely breathe. And at the center of it all stood the keeper, lantern, heart blazing like a sun. The keeper spread his skeletal arms. Every light was once a soul, he said. Every lantern a memory, a life, a scream. He pointed at Elena. And she will be my brightest flame. The lanterns around them shook violently, rattling like bones. Marissa screamed, "You can have her." The keeper's grin split his jaw from ear to ear. "You have nothing to bargain with, nothing but yourselves." The floor cracked open beneath them. Pillars rose, each one with a lantern resting atop it. 3 lanterns glowed faintly, waiting. The keeper's voice thundered, "Choose. 1 to keep, 2 to feed." Darren realized with horror. This was no puzzle. It was a sentence. 2 lives for 1. He looked at Marissa. She looked back. Both knew what it meant. Marissa stepped forward. "No," she whispered. "He does. You get to decide." "I do." She grabbed 1 lantern in her hands. The heat seared her skin, but she lifted it high. The keeper's eyes widened. With a scream, she hurled it against the stone floor. The glass shattered, and for the first time, the lantern's light went out. The chamber shook. The other lanterns howled, shrieking with thousands of voices. The keeper bellowed, lantern, heart flickering violently. "You dare." The lanterns rattled so hard they cracked, beams of light tearing through the stone walls. Marissa collapsed, her hands blistered and bleeding, but her eyes burned with defiance. "You don't own us." Darren grabbed a broken shard of lantern glass. The edges glowed white, hot, burning his palm. He didn't care. With a roar, he charged the keeper and drove the shard straight into the lantern. Heart. The chamber exploded with light. For a split second, Darren saw all of them. Every soul, every trapped scream, every life stolen. Then came the silence. The keeper staggered. Lantern heart cracked, light sputtering. For the first time, he looked fragile, weak. The chamber shook violently as dozens of lanterns burst, releasing streams of golden light that soared upward, vanishing into the void above. Elena collapsed, the glow fading from her eyes. Marissa crawled to her, holding her tight, but Darren didn't move. His hand was still inside the lantern, heart, his body glowing. He looked at them with tears in his eyes. "Go." The keeper stumbled backward, clutching his chest where the shards still burned. The lantern, heart cracked, its glow sputtering like a dying flame. For the first time his voice trembled. You cannot break the light. It has no end." But Darren could feel the truth. Every flicker inside the keeper's chest was unstable, faltering. The keeper was bleeding light. Darren's skin glowed faintly now, cracks of gold running up his arms and across his chest. The shard in his hand had fused with his palm, its glow pulsing in rhythm with his heart. Marissa screamed, "You! Re-burning!" Darren clenched his teeth. "If it takes me with him, fine." The keeper roared, lanterns bursting from the walls, streaks of light diving at Darren like arrows. Elena stirred, blinking as the last of the glow drained from her eyes. Her voice was weak, but it was hers again. "Ah, Balyu, what happened?" Marissa pulled her close. Don't look." Just stay with me. But Elena's gaze shifted past her, staring at Darren at the cracked lantern heart. She whispered, "He can win alone." The chamber's walls exploded outward. Lanterns poured like rain, falling and rolling across the floor, their lights flickering violently. Some smashed and freed a wisp of light. Others cracked open, spilling black smoke that howled like dying animals. The keeper spread his arms, pulling their light back into himself. His lantern heart blazed, brighter and brighter, drowning the chamber in gold. The air grew hotter. The floor cracked. The lantern house was tearing itself apart. Marissa grabbed one of the fallen lanterns. It seared her flesh, but she didn't. She let go. She lifted it above her head. Darren now. Now. Darren understood. Together they smashed the lanterns, shards exploding in waves of fire and smoke. Every break weakened the keeper further, his scream echoing with the sound of glass shattering. The keeper's arm shot forward, bone fingers stretching like claws. He grabbed Marissa by the throat and lifted her off the ground. Her legs kicked wildly as he squeezed, his lantern heart blazing hotter. "You will not unmake me," he growled. Darren charged again, the shard burning brighter in his hand. Darren drove the shard deeper into the lantern. "Heart!" This time, the keeper screamed. Not with rage, but with fear. The glow burst outward, cracking his rib cage like glass. His body split, light pouring from every seam. The chamber shook as more lanterns exploded, their souls spiraling upward, freed. For the first time, the keeper was breaking. Elena stood up. Her body trembled, weak, but her eyes were steady. She reached for one of the fallen lanterns. Unlike the others, it didn't burn her. It glowed gently in her hands. A voice whispered inside it. Her mother's voice. "Elena, you can end it, but you must give yourself." She looked at Darren, at Marissa. Then she raised the lantern high. Elena slammed the lantern against the floor. The explosion of light swallowed everything. The keeper screamed as his lantern heart shattered completely, his body tearing apart into shards of burning glass. Lanterns all around them burst, releasing streams of gold that flew upward like shooting stars. The chamber collapsed, the walls folding inward as the lantern house itself cracked like an egg. When the light faded, the chamber was gone. They stood in the woods again, the ruins of the house smoldering around them. No lanterns, no keeper, just silence. Darren collapsed to his knees, his body still glowing faintly, cracks of light seeping from his skin. Marissa clutched Elena tight, sobbing. They had won, but Darren wasn't coming back. Darren didn't move. The glow from his body pulsed in irregular bursts. His skin cracked, golden light leaking from every fissure. Marissa reached for him, but the heat burned her hands. His eyes, once full of life, now shone like molten metal. "I can stop," he whispered. His voice trembled, distant yet powerful. "It's in me, the light, the house." The shard in his hand crumbled into dust, leaving him tethered to the remaining glow. Marissa grabbed Elena's hand. "We have to leave him. It's not Darren anymore." Elena shook her head, tears streaking her face. "I can't just leave him." Darren spoke again, his voice layered with dozens of others, whispers seeping from the glow. "You can't save me. I am the keeper now." The realization hit them both like a stone. Darren was becoming the next lantern, hearted guardian of the house. wherever it reformed. The ruins of the lantern house smoldered behind them, but the forest around it began to twist. Trees bent unnaturally, roots clawing at the sky. Lantern, light flickered in the shadows, hundreds of ghostly orbs floating in the distance. Elena and Marissa stumbled backward, watching the light retreat. The keeper's laughter, Darren's laughter, echoed from the distance. Darren raised a hand, shards of golden light flowing from his fingers. I am still me a little, he said. Run, survive, remember. Marissa and Elena ran. Every step burned, but the forest path opened as if the land itself wanted them gone. Behind them, the glow pulsed stronger, alive. Darren's laughter melded with screams, ringing in their ears long after they had escaped the clearing. By morning, they found themselves on the edge of a small town. The sky was gray, clouds thick, sunlight weak. Marissa and Elena could speak. The horrors they had seen pressed on their minds. Every shadow seemed to move. Every wind seemed to whisper. The forest behind them was quiet, too quiet. At the town's edge, Elena found a marker, a stone with carved letters glowing faintly. The house waits. Do not follow the lanterns. She shivered, recalling every face, every scream, every flicker of gold. Marissa held her close. I'll warn them. Whoever comes near that place, they need to know. But deep inside, they both felt the truth. The lantern house would not remain destroyed forever. That night, both women dreamed. Lanterns floated outside their bedroom windows. Inside each lantern was a figure, Darren, eyes molten, smiling with a fractured face. You can. Hide from me, his voice whispered, faintly at first. Then louder, I am the light. I am forever. They woke in terror, shaking, realizing the house's influence had followed them. Weeks passed. Life returned to a semblance of normal until the knock at the door. A young boy stood there, lantern in hand, his face pale, eyes too dark, smile frozen. Are you the keeper? Marissa asked, voice trembling. The boy shook his head. He is coming. He always comes. The light waits for him. That night they saw it, a faint glow moving along the horizon, through the forest. It wasn't the keeper yet, not fully, but it pulsed with the rhythm of a beating heart. Marissa whispered, clutching Elena's arm. It is him, Darren. He's coming back. And with the lantern, light in the distance, the trees began to shift, branches stretching toward the glow. Elena and Marissa realized the nightmare wasn't over. The lantern house had left the ruins, yes, but Darren, now keeper, carried its heart with him. Every town, every road, every night could become the next chamber, and the glow would come for them again, like a moth drawn to fire. They held each other tight, knowing one truth: some horrors are never defeated. The town seemed ordinary, but by nightfall it shifted. Shadows moved against walls, whispering. Doors creaked on their own. Windows reflected lanterns that weren't there. Elena and Marissa hid inside a small cabin, but the whispers grew louder. You cannot escape. He is the light. It was Darren's voice, layered with hundreds of others. They realized the lanterns were spreading, consuming reality. A stranger appeared on their doorstep, a woman with silver hair and eyes like molten metal. I know him, she said softly. I survived the lantern house once. You cannot fight him with strength, only with understanding, Elena asked, voice trembling. Darren, can he be saved? The woman shook her head. He is part of the house now, but you may slow it. You may survive. The woman led them to an abandoned chapel on the outskirts. Lanterns had been carved into the walls, each one a seal. Here, you can make him hesitate, she explained. The lanterns contain fragments of his humanity. Speak to him, call his name, remind him of who he was. Marissa swallowed hard, and if it fails, the woman's face went pale. Then the house will never end, and he will never die. That night, Darren's glow appeared in the forest near the chapel. Elena stepped forward, voice trembling. Darren, it's me, Marissa and I. We re-hear. The light pulsed violently. I cannot hear you, came his layered voice. Marissa held Elena back. He will try to break through. The forest shook. Lanterns appeared in the trees, thousands of them, hovering in every direction. Elena held her hands toward the glow. Remember who you are, Darren. Remember the van. Remember the fun. Remember us. For a heartbeat, the glow softened. A flicker of his old eyes appeared inside the molten light. The keeper screamed, rage and confusion mingling. I am the light, but somewhere, buried deep, Darren's humanity fought back. The silver-haired woman placed her hand on a lantern seal in the chapel wall. Some part of him must be contained, she said. You cannot destroy him, only trap him. One must stay to hold the light. Marissa's eyes widened. You mean one of us? Elena nodded, tears streaking her face. It has to be me, he. I'll respond to me. Elena stepped into the forest, lantern held high. The keeper, Darren, emerged fully luminous, molten and towering over her. I am the house, he rumbled, voice layered with screams. I am eternal. Elena whispered his name. Darren, please. The glow wavered. His molten eyes flickered with recognition, a memory of their friendship shining through. Elena placed the lantern against the largest tree in the clearing. The seal glowed and hummed, pulling the keeper toward it. Darren struggled, roaring in rage and grief, light splintering around. I can leave you. His voice cracked, half his own, half the house. Elena held tight, tears streaming, whispering every memory of their shared past. The light surged, engulfing Darren entirely. The keeper screamed, thrashing against the seal, lantern shards exploding outward. Marissa shielded her eyes as the forest shook. When the roar ended, there was silence. The lantern sealed the molten figure inside, glowing faintly, contained but alive. Elena collapsed, exhausted, shaking. Marissa pulled her into her arms. It's over, for now. The forest was quiet. Lanterns no longer floated. The house had been contained. Its heart trapped within the seal. Darren alive, but lost. But in the distance, a faint golden pulse remained. A reminder, some horrors never fully die. Weeks passed. Elena and Marissa stayed near the sealed lantern, guarding it quietly in the chapel. The forest had returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after the lantern house. No floating lanterns, no whispers in the trees, no glowing eyes in the shadows. Yet every night, Elena dreamed of Darren, trapped inside molten light, whispering her name. One night, a faint glow appeared from the lantern seal. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Elena stepped closer. Darren, she whispered. A whisper returned, layered, distant, yet unmistakably him. Elena, Dawn, let go. Marissa held her back. It's a trap. The house is never done. The pulse faded, but their hearts knew it hadn't ended. A traveler arrived at the chapel's edge. He claimed to be a collector of old myths, seeking the lantern house. Elena and Marissa warned him. He didn't believe them. That night, the golden pulse in the lantern grew brighter, responding to his curiosity. Even sealed, the house smelled the living, the curious, the foolish. The traveler tried to touch the seal. Immediately, the lanterns inside flared violently. A scream erupted, shaking the chapel walls. The traveler fell back, screaming as golden cracks spiderwebbed across the floor. Elena and Marissa realized curiosity alone could awaken the house again. They carved a warning into the chapel wall. The keeper waits. The light hungers. Touch nothing, speak nothing. Yet every day they saw shadows flicker in the forest. The golden pulse reminding them Darren, and the house was still alive, still conscious, still aware. No peace existed beyond the seal. Elena, dreams worsened. She saw Darren walking through the forest, lantern, heart blazing. Following her, she woke screaming, clutching Marissa, only to feel the pulse of light beneath her bed, faint, almost teasing. The house was patient. It could wait decades if necessary. They began leaving signs, lantern symbols carved into trees, old diaries buried, cryptic notes tucked in libraries. They didn't want anyone to find the house, but every warning was a thread in the web, a subtle shimmer to draw attention. The house would find a way. Always, one evening, Marissa heard it, a whisper carried on the wind, soft but distinct. Elena, Marissa. She froze. The trees seemed to bend toward the sound. The pulse in the lantern quickened. Even sealed, even contained, the house had not forgotten them. The lantern seal glowed once more, steadily, unwavering. Elena and Marissa watched in silence, hearts pounding. The pulse was the heartbeat of Darren, the keeper, the house itself, and they understood the moment they grew careless. The pulse would become a blaze. A new lantern house could rise. Elena and Marissa sat by the seal forevermore, guardians against a light that could never die. The house slept, but its heartbeat reminded them every second. Some horrors never truly end. Darren's voice whispered faintly from within, I am still here, waiting. And outside, in the forest, a faint glimmer of lantern. Light danced in the distance. The terror was not gone. It had only paused. The lantern house would rise again, and they would be ready, or they would become part of it. One rainy morning, Elena and Marissa found a child standing by the chapel doors, soaked, shivering, no name. When they asked who she was, she whispered, I followed the lights. Behind her, in the misty woods, faint lanterns swayed as though welcoming her. While cleaning the chapel, Elena found a leather-bound journal hidden beneath the altar. Inside were sketches of lanterns, forests, and figures with glowing eyes. The last entry read, We sealed it before, we failed. It always returns. The keeper is eternal. The handwriting was eerily similar to her own. One night, the floor beneath the chapel cracked. Golden veins of light pushed through the earth, winding up the walls. Marissa struck at them with an axe, but the roots simply retreated, laughing in soft, echoing whispers. The house wasn't dead. It was growing beneath them, patient as ever. They kept watch, but one evening, a single lantern appeared in the forest. It hung from a branch, swaying gently. No chains, no rope, nothing holding it in place. When the wind blew, it didn't move, and inside the flame, Elena swore she saw Darren's face, smiling faintly. Elena wrote in her own journal. We have not ended it. We have only delayed it. The house waits for us to falter. The keeper waits to be freed. And when we are gone, it will rise again. Someone else will find the glow. Someone else will step into the forest. And so, the story didn't end. It only circled back to its beginning. The lantern house would always be there, waiting. One night, Marissa woke to a figure standing at the foot of her bed. It looked like Darren's same height, same hair, same crooked smile, but its eyes glowed golden, and when she blinked, the figure melted into the wall like candle wax. The next morning, a lantern-shaped burn mark lingered on the wood. During a storm, the chapel roof leaked. As Elena placed buckets to catch the water, she realized the dripping wasn't random, it formed words. Let me out. She froze. The lantern seal glowed faintly, as if agreeing with the message. At dusk, the trees shivered, though there was no wind. Lanterns appeared in the branches, one by one, until the forest glowed like a carnival. Elena counted dozens before she screamed at Marissa to close the chapel doors. When the doors slammed shut, the glow outside vanished instantly. But they knew the forest hadn't gone dark. It was only waiting. Marissa smashed an old mirror in the chapel after catching a glimpse of something behind her that wasn't there. But each shard reflected a different version of her face, some with glowing eyes, some screaming, some chained to lanterns. One shard whispered, "You'll join us soon." She buried the pieces in the chapel floor, but at night, she could still hear them singing faintly. The nameless child who had wandered to the chapel vanished one morning. All that remained on her bed was a small lantern glowing softly. Elena refused to touch it, but at night, they heard the child's voice whispering from inside, "Thank you for letting me in." The lantern's flame never went out. The chapel's stone floor began to fracture. Through the cracks, a faint golden light seeped out, pulsing with a heartbeat rhythm. Marissa pressed her ear to the stone once. She heard chains rattling, and Darren's muffled laugh. She never touched the cracks again. At midnight, the chapel bells rang on their own. No ropes moved, no hands touched them. Each toll was low, distorted, hollow. And after the 12th ring, Elena swore she heard the bells whisper, "The lanterns are awake." The forest outside glowed faintly. Both women began to notice faint golden markings appearing on their arms, like veins of light beneath the skin. The more they ignored them, the brighter they pulsed. One night, Elena dreamt her hands were glowing lanterns, and when she woke, her fingertips left faint scorch marks on her bed sheets. One morning, the chapel had a new door. It wasn't there the day before. It stood in the back wall, wooden, with a golden handle shaped like a lantern flame. Neither of them dared to open it, but every night they heard soft knocking from the other side. The fog outside thickened until it became a solid wall of gold. Shapes walked inside it, silhouettes holding lanterns, whispering softly. The fog pressed against the chapel windows like a tide. Elena and Marissa realized the forest was gone. There was only the house now, spreading outward, swallowing the world lantern by lantern.